we had some interesting pumpkin experiments that went on in class today. And so you are now going to answer another question and check some graphs and answer some questions about a flying pumpkin again. But I want to make sure that you do things in the right order. Here's the data that you're going to use. It says plot the data on a graph. This particular Google Doc does not have the graph, but the one that you have, which is a Word document, does have the graph. But the words are the same. Experiment with several values of initial velocity and initial height in search of a function that models the data pattern well. Do this before going on to part B. Put your axes on the graph. Notice that this only goes up to 4. That may change how you put your intervals on your horizontal axis for time. Notice this maximum here is 70. It does not go negative, so you don't need the third or fourth quadrants. You don't even need the second quadrant. So please make sure that your graph makes sense and make sure you're spreading things out enough so that it takes up as much space as possible on your grid. And then it's asking you to play with some values. Well, how are you going to play with these values? Well, I'm going to show you. And I'm going to show you with a different example, though. So what I want you to think about is using Desmos. And Desmos is it's an online graphing calculator, and it's very useful and very user-friendly once you start getting used to some of the little tricks of the trade. What's going to be easiest to do is go into your Google Drive. Mine's already open, and I want you to open a new Google Sheet, because I want you to put your data into a Google Sheet. So I want you to put time, your 0, 1, half, 1, 1.5, and so on, all the way up to 4 seconds here. And then in column B, you're going to put the height of the pumpkin at that time. So you're going to do that. I already have this done for a different set of data. Here's my different set of data. And it's completely different equation and everything like that. But I'm going to use this data to show you how to set it up in Desmos so that you can work on how to get this data into the calculator. I'm going to delete all of this so that we can start fresh. I should have done that before, but that's okay. So once you've got your data in there, you need to kind of finish part A. So if you click on this, then hit Shift and click on this, it will select all of that region, Control, and then hit C. So they're both down at the same time. We'll copy that area. Then go to your Desmos. Desmos is desmos.com. You don't have to worry about the calculator part. Just do www.desmos.com. And when that comes up, hit the great big bright red Start Graphing button. You can create an account if you want. Just create it and sign in with your Google account, and you'll be good to go. But you don't have to. That's not necessary at this point. So here, I'm just going to click in there, and I'm going to do Control V to paste. You can also double tap with your fingers, with 2 fingers, and that's like a right click, and then you can hit paste. And here's my data. This data is a little different than your data because it's different data. So I don't need all of this empty space. So I need to change my graph settings. So that's what the wrench does. It's not that little wheel like this one. This is my graph settings. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to set my X at -1. It will not double click and select the whole thing. So you may need to put it at the end and backspace. Here, I'm going to click on here and do Control A. That will select all of it. And I am going to do -10. That way I see just a little bit below the graph so I can see where my axis is. And then for my max, I could leave it at that, but I'm going to change it, and I'm going to make it 120. And then I'm going to label this time and this height. That way I remember what my X and Y stand for. Then just click on the wrench again, or you can hit escape and it'll hide the menu. And there's my beautiful data. So what the rest of part A is asking you to do is come up with an equation that might model this. Now, my initial height pretty much is given to me right here, right? That's where the pumpkin started at in this case. So I am going to start with y equals 25 is my initial height. And then I'm just going to guess something. Plus 10x, maybe my initial upward velocity, is only 10 miles per hour, or feet per second, sorry. And then minus your gravity, minus 16t squared. To do your x, do shift 6, get your caret in there, and you can see how it raised it up for an exponent and squared. And this purple is this purple, and this is not this graph. So I'm going to try changing this, and I'm going to change it to 20. Ooh, and boom, it does it automatically. So it's really easy to see. So what about 40? Nope. What about 80? Oh, too high. What about 70? Not quite. So let me in the difference right in the middle, 75. That looks pretty good. So here is the equation that I would write down for part A. This is what I played with. This is what I came up with. All right. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as what you come up with because my data is different. But part B is now asking you to use a regression. It says use a calculator or computer tool that offers quadratic curve fitting to find a quadratic model. So like Desmos. So this is what you're doing. But the trick is a little bit different. Notice that this says X1 and Y1. We have to use those. And we are not going to use an equal sign. I repeat, we will not use equals because that makes it an equation and it won't let me change anything. So what I do is I do Y1. And our standard form of the equation is that x squared part first. So I'm going to end up putting this part first. And you'll see why in just a minute. But I have to use the tilde. It's the little button that looks like this. It's right next to the 1 on your keyboard, but you have to hit shift. So I'm going to do shift and that accent, and it gives me that tilde. And then ax squared. A is the parameter for my x squared term. I know it's probably going to be close to minus 16, but that's okay. So a x1. You don't have to press anything special. You just need to hit x and 1, and you'll get the subscript. Now I need squared. Shift 6 squared plus bx1, that's my velocity that I'm looking for, plus c. Now remember, all of those are pluses, so if the number ends up being negative, then you have a minus in there. And that graph looks pretty good, that black graph, that black parabola there. That's what this is. And these values down here, notice this is that a term. The x squared term is the a term, and that's negative 15.6, so that's pretty close to negative 16, right? 25.9, that's pretty darn close to what that is for my initial height. And then my this is my velocity, my initial upward velocity, and that's 73.2, which is pretty darn close to 75. So that's the equation that you would write. You can put it in the same form as this and do maybe 25.9 plus 73.2t minus 15.6t squared. And that will give you something very close to that. Won't be exact either because we rounded those numbers off, but it's going to be pretty darn close. So that's how you would get the regression. And this is what those values are for that regression equation. Remember, this is standard form. This is backwards from standard form. So please be very careful about that. I could rewrite this as negative 16x squared plus 75x plus 25 and get the same equation that I did for that purple color. So what I want you to do now, you can rewind and fast forward and do whatever you need to figure out how to do this. But you're going to try it with your own data. So go back to that open spreadsheet and put in that data from the table in number 7 on your homework. So we will see you tomorrow. And good luck with this. We're going to be using Desmos a lot. And you're going to find that it's going to be very comfortable, but you're not going to be able to use it on tests, at least not right now. So good luck with this, and we will talk about how you did in the morning.